Hello, and welcome back to the Talking Longevity podcast. Today, we've got a really exciting episode all about endometriosis. Endometriosis is such a big topic out there and very often misunderstood. So let's start by this. Dr. Kai, tell us a little bit about your experience in the GP land, about how patients are presented to you, maybe a case study you've seen, and how you find that endometriosis affects women.
Okay, so endometriosis is a huge topic. As you know, it affects something like 10% of women that we're aware of. But I think the big thing about endometriosis is that there are many women that don't know they've got it. And the reason I say this is because by the time I've seen some of these women, they've had years of seeing a doctor and having no treatment, or being told it's IBS, or being told it's just part of their normal period pain. This includes women that have come in and said, but the pains are not in my lower abdomen, they're in my chest, they're in my back, I'm getting bowel symptoms. So it's once they've come to see me as a GP, I then will refer them to go and get a diagnostic laparoscopy. But this can take over 2 years before they're actually getting the diagnosis. And by then, they've already had years of symptoms before they've seen a GP with a specialist interest in these topics. And then they come to you.
Yeah.
And what happens then?
And often they spend a lot of time being misdiagnosed, as you've said.
Yeah.
Because symptoms, as we'll find out shortly, symptoms aren't always exactly how you expect them to be.
No.
Then there's a huge waiting list often. The average time in the UK, according to Endometriosis UK, they did some research. The average time from experiencing symptoms to getting a formal diagnosis is 8 years and 10 months.
Wow.
So
I didn't realise it was that long.
If you think people are living with those symptoms for that long, think about the impact that has on them, not just physically, emotionally, everything. It has a huge impact on their life. Can have an impact on fertility as well. So huge issues. And then actually when they get to us in the hospitals, they're on a waiting list for a laparoscopy. Laparoscopies, waiting lists can take months and months and years to get round to.
Yeah.
And actually laparoscopies are often seen as kind of this sort of holy grail of this will tell me what's going on. And actually, yes, it often will, but will it change the management? Sometimes it will. If you have to do, severe endometriosis, you do resections and things, but actually in the majority of people, it's not. It's just saying, yes, you've got endometriosis.
Yes.
And actually, is it going to change the management after that? Probably not. You're going to carry on with the same medications and think about the risks associated with it. There's risks associated with bowel perforation, bladder injury, things like that.
And
plus
adhesions
general anesthetic.
as well.
Exactly. So I think, yes, it's a good option, but it's got to be taken with the knowledge of what the risks are associated with it and what the end game is.
Yes.
Is it going to change the outcome? Are you going to have different medications as a result? Or actually, are there other ways we can manage this and other ways we can diagnose this?
Yes. And we've got two fantastic guest speakers coming on today. We've got Helen, who is going to talk about her experiences with endometriosis and what she's doing to promote the knowledge of endometriosis. And then we've got Ian with a device that we're both quite fond of and we're getting quite excited about called EndoSure. And we're going to talk to Ian about that because it's a minimally invasive device is how I'd describe it in comparison to a laparoscopy. And its diagnostic ability seems to be very, very promising.
Yeah. I mean, I'd argue non-invasive.
Non-invasive, yeah.
And actually, it can be done in an hour and it's something that doesn't have the risks associated that a laparoscopy does. And actually, fair enough, you may still need that gold standard laparoscopy, particularly if you need surgical intervention. But actually, if it's just about that validation of, you're not going mad, these pains you're experiencing are real and we can treat them, then the EndoSure device might be the option. So maybe it's time for us to stop talking about it and get somebody in who actually knows what they're talking about, and we'll get Helen on to give us her experience of living with endometriosis.
Yes, sounds great.
Hey, thanks, Helen. Thanks for coming along. So we are hoping you having experience of endometriosis, you'll be able to shed some light on this that maybe we can't. So just start from the very beginning, sort of your journey with endometriosis. How did it start? What were your symptoms like? How did that look?
So with my symptoms, I would say they probably started about 10 years ago now, but it was very stomach related. So I was going to the doctors for many years with quite bad flare-ups, but I could never explain these flare-ups. And it was never anything that I'd ate because I was like backtracking on everything I'd ate. I'd gone gluten-free, done all that side of things. After years and years and years after being told it's just IBS or stress, I actually managed to get into a female GP and she referred me to me to gynecology. So from that point, I went to the NHS down that route, and they said, we think you might have it, but we're going to have to do an operation, and if it is quite deep rooted around your bowel, you will obviously maybe wake up with a bag.
So that was the laparoscopy that they did?
Yes, so that was, well, this was the diagnosis is one.
Yeah.
So then when I went away and did some more research about my symptoms, etc., I thought that's not the route that I want to go down. So I ended up going down private. So I had an MRI scan, which it came up, and all my bloods, etc., with a private doctor. Mm-hmm. And then he actually referred me to an even better specialist because it was stage 4 and it was quite deep rooted around my pouch of Douglas, hence why I was having all the bowel symptoms, very personal, but I was like bleeding from my bum during my period. And it's quite, nobody believes you, and it's quite embarrassing because you don't actually talk about them things with your friends or your family. My mum actually was like, are you just wiping properly? And I'm like, no, I'm definitely wiping, but I do know how to wipe. So them symptoms were quite like embarrassing, and like my stomach, I just thought it was very like food based. And then when I actually got diagnosed and knowing that it was like deep rooted, it was actually such a relief because I knew that it wasn't everything that they had said in the past, and obviously I had endometriosis. So then I had my surgery about 4 years ago now, and from that point it has changed my life. And I think it's changed my life just knowing and understanding like the severe fatigue that I get, especially the week before my period, just being a little bit kinder to myself. My mood swings have been miles better. So it has changed my life in that side of things. I was never suffered with painful periods, as people do saying heavy periods. So when we went down the endometriosis route, I was like, I've not got that. Like my periods are regular, I'm fine. However, being diagnosed has actually shown me that them periods that we're having wasn't normal.
Yeah.
But we do massive campaigns. So I've got laser clinics across the UK, and we see so many people come in with all different types of symptoms. So we encourage them to go down the route of getting diagnosed because it's not always painful periods.
No.
I think if you suffer with it and you're saying, I didn't realise I had them symptoms, it's no wonder the medics who are seeing people are even more confused, going, God knows what, because it presents in so many different ways.
It does.
Yeah,
it
and
really does.
period pain is perceived differently, right? Some people can tolerate a lot more than other people.
Yeah.
So I think just on pain alone, it's difficult. But one of the key things that you mentioned there is your symptoms were coming when you had your period, and still it was being missed.
Yes.
And I think that's really important. And one of the things that we touched on in a previous podcast is, with general practice, it is general practice. And you said, as soon as you got to a female GP, I'm not saying male GPs can't diagnose it, but when it's women's health, you do tend to have specialist interests with female GPs. That's not always the case. But as soon as you got to someone that had an interest in women's health, they were like, actually, this could be endometriosis. And, one of the things we talked about earlier before you came on was, is getting a diagnosis early important if the treatment is going to be the same? So when I'm seeing people, I'll make a clinical diagnosis, start them on treatment while they're waiting, but their wait can be 36 months, years sometimes.
Yeah. That's why I didn't go down the NHS route, because I thought it's affecting my life so much that I just want to go private. And I understand not everybody can afford to go private. I actually, when I was going through the NHS and the doctors, they actually referred me down the stomach route. And I remember I seen a specialist, and he was like, what do you do as a job, Helen? I said, well, I've got 4 businesses, very busy. And he went, oh, it's just stress. And then that was another year of all the symptoms.
Because then you're back at the start.
Yeah, and then one thing for me was tracking my flare-ups of the stomach flare-ups. And they came exactly 7 days before my period. So that's when I was like, oh, and then I asked for a female GP, and then we went down that route. So it does take a while.
It does come down to training, doesn't it, with some doctors? So to stand up a little bit for the male, male doctors out there, I do think it's partly training across the board in women's health isn't always great. either at medical school or beyond that.
Yeah.
And often what happens is it's the female GPs in the practice who end up working more with women because women will want to see a female, and that's how the experience is gained. But I think because of that, men actually end up losing quite a bit of the opportunities because how often I've, even as a med student, and even now as a obs and gynae doctor, I want a female doctor.
Yeah.
And actually you need to let those male doctors in on that to learn, otherwise they'll never be able to.
My specialist who I work with alongside, he's male, and he is incredible.
Yeah.
He is amazing. The knowledge that he has and how he makes you feel as well. He's very gentle, not judgmental. So he's male. So
I'm sure there are people who are going to ask us. I'm sure there are people who are going to ask us who this specialist is.
Andrew Pickerskill.
There we go. And one question I wanted to ask you was the diagnosis then. So you, obviously yours was very severe, and it's a spectrum, isn't it? Some people won't have as severe symptoms as you had and may not need surgery, but actually just want that diagnosis. How important for you was getting that diagnosis?
Well, I think especially over the past 2 years when I've been really, researching, it's about inflammation in the body. So for me, I think the diagnosis and just working on inflammation has massively changed and helped and benefited my health and my business, my relationships, because working on that inflammation and not actually just focusing just on your hormones and saying like, this is the way I am, has massively helped. So just in mental health as well, that is massively increased.
That sort of psychological toll of not knowing what's going on, being passed from pillar to post.
Yeah.
Having these symptoms and going, I just need an answer.
And what are you doing for the inflammation? Are you just using medication, or are you going down sort of more of a biohacking lifestyle type route?
So I'm not a massive medication fan. Yes, it can help people. I understand that. However, I have walked away from an appointment before with a massive bag of medications, and I thought, I'm not taking all these. I'm going to try and do it naturally. So I actually do blood work analysis every 6 months. I've just had my results back yesterday, and it's the first time in probably like 5 years that I've had normal range of hormones, and the only thing that I've changed in the past 6 months is inflammation. So working on foods, like not spiking my blood sugar all the time, and obviously going down the route of, saunas, like ice baths, and maybe not doing really crazy workouts, doing more gentle workouts like walking and Pilates. That's really benefited.
We should get you on every single one of our podcasts.
Fine, I'll be here all the time.
You've covered so much of the stuff, but it is so true, isn't it? Actually having that holistic approach to looking after your own health is so important.
And I think that's the whole purpose of this podcast, is so people can understand that, yes, of course, there's a place for medication, but if you look after your own health and change your lifestyle, start using biohacking methods, you're going to make a big difference. And, you're massively. Obviously evidence for it. And so it's fantastic having you on.
One thing I wanted to ask just for you to kind of give advice to people who are listening. You've already name dropped the really good surgeons. That's great.
He's really busy.
There will be people out there listening to this who are suffering with symptoms. Either they know it's endometriosis, or they don't, and after listening to you, they're now suspecting it might be.
Yes.
What advice would you give them? Where would you sort of signpost them to? What do they need to do? So
every March we do a Break the Taboo campaign, because there's a huge taboo around personal. It's not as much as when we first started 4 years ago doing it. People are more talking to other people. Talk about your symptoms. Ask your friends, like, do you have these symptoms? Because regarding the bleeding from the bum, I remember asking my friend, and she was like, no, that's weird. Like, and then I was like, oh, okay. But then that was actually like, okay, that's not normal then. And going down that route of just having that support system around you, really important. Being really kind to yourself. That is the main important thing is, yes, we have mood swings. Yes, we have severe fatigue. And yes, some days we can't get out of bed, but that's okay. And just sort of being kind to yourself and knowing that you're going to be having one of them days, taking the time out for yourself, especially myself. I'm so busy. But when I have got that fatigue where I'm like, I have to fall asleep, I will go home and nap and not feel guilty about it. So my advice is definitely try and get an early diagnosis if you can. Speak to the people, research your food as well. I'm gluten-free, but I've been gluten-free for many, many years now. And that does help, obviously, inflammation. trying to figure out what does trigger you as well. And one main thing is that I speak to my clients about a lot is stress is a huge one. I mean, I'm saying this and I got extreme stress on mine yesterday. So great, love that. But think about your lifestyle. So are you waking up straight away and drinking a coffee and it's on an empty stomach, and then you're rushing out and you're just grabbing something?
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee anymore. I don't drink caffeine. That has been a massive game changer. Obviously people are like, God, I can't live without it. But honestly, you can.
Yeah.
So just sort of like looking at them tiny little lifestyles to help and to which will benefit. And also just start making note of like how things make you feel. Because like HIIT classes for me, yes, I was losing weight. However, I felt rubbish all day.
Yes.
So that wasn't the right, I was going to say treatment for me. It is a treatment. It's more like hell, but it's fine.
No, I think that's really, really informative. And I do think it'll help a lot of people. And I think, you mentioned you had the bowel symptoms, but for some people it's chest pain before their periods because they've got the endometriosis is affecting their lungs, or they get back pain in strange places.
Yes.
Cyclical nosebleeds.
Yes,
Wow.
cyclical nosebleeds. And I think you're right. We need to make sure that the awareness of these symptoms is it's really out there. And on the Talking Longevity Instagram account, we will be putting up, the weird and wonderful symptoms that come with endometriosis, so people are aware of it. And I know you've got a lot of information about that as well.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, we can put some links to your Instagram and your website and
definitely.
things onto ours.
Yeah.
So people know where to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as well, like we remove hair, we remove tattoos, etc. But we're one of the leading laser brands in the UK. But we are hormone health specialists. So I actually designed a course for anyone in the beauty industry, service-based industry, where your clients come in and maybe the hair's all falling out. That's a hormone imbalance. How do you talk about that? Because we get many people coming in and they might not have painful periods. They might not have the usual, especially with PCOS, overweight, etc. But we have them like hard conversations with them and how to do that and go around that. So I've got a little course as well. It's only £20, but just to have them conversations in the service-based business, because we see things that we know that aren't not particularly normal, but might be affecting the person's life.
Yeah, and you're in a great position to point that out and help, aren't you?
Yeah, and if you can send us that link, we'll put that on our Instagram as well.
Amazing, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a very busy woman, so I appreciate you taking the time for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Hello and welcome back, Ian. We loved having you on the last podcast, so we've invited you to a second one. But today we're going to be speaking about EndoSure and endometriosis. So please, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so the EndoSure test is a non-invasive diagnostic test for endometriosis. It takes about an hour. If I go back to the start, a little bit of history, the first paper that associated myoelectrical activity of your gut and endometriosis was done back in 1998. Basically, they put cannulas down into the small bowel and they measured the frequency. The logic being that in the presence of endometriosis, you get 2 prostaglandins released and they have like a seizure-like effect on the small bowel. So what we do is measure the activity of that bowel. Now, the activity will be different in something like IBS or gallbladder disease or something like that. So they proved in 1998 that endometriosis had like a fingerprint in myoelectrical activity. Moving on, they then had to test 3,000 to 4,000 patients to see what was normal. So normal people with all sorts of different diseases, and that formed the artificial intelligence that underpins the actual study itself. So what happens now is the patient comes in, they have 3 electrodes put onto the abdomen. They sit down in a reclining position for 10 minutes to start off with, and we do a baseline test. We then let them drink some water, and then we test again for 30 minutes. At the end of the test, which has taken an hour, you will have a diagnosis of whether it's endometriosis, yes or no. But more than that, it will give you a level of activity. Now, we're not saying that the level of activity necessarily means you've got stage 3 or stage 4, but it means that you have got it. And if you've got a small amount of endometriosis, that might be very active, which might give quite a high reading. But the clever thing is that on the back of this, you can use it for several reasons. One of the first studies we did was on patients that had previous surgery, who 18 months to 2 years later had come back saying they've got some similar symptoms again. So we gave them the test, and quite a few of those were actually positive again. Similarly, we've had patients, or we're trying to do a trial with this now, where when people know that they've got endo, or been diagnosed with endo, we'll give them the EndoSure test because they're going for a laparoscopic clearance. So we'll take a test and we'll get a level of activity. They will then go for the clearance, have the endometriosis removed. Then we'll test again, probably 6 months later when everything has settled down. If all the endometriosis has been removed, then it should be a negative test. If a lot of it's been removed, but some of it has been retained, it will still be a positive test, but you have expected that activity to go down. So that's going to be the basis of hopefully an NHS trial that's going to start very soon.
Yeah. That's very exciting. How would you compare the diagnostic ability of the test to the gold standard, which is laparoscopy? From the trials that you've done, how well do you think it compares?
On the study that was done initially, the clinical paper that underpins this, the accuracy was very, very high. It comes up at like 98%. We've been called in the past in hospitals that have done diagnostic laparoscopies which have been negative, but the patient has continued to have issues. We've then done the EndoSure test and it's been found to be positive. Now, in 2 instances, that turned out to be adenomyosis. In another one, it was just something that was missed. That's important because what the test is doing is picking up the endometriosis. It's not telling you where it is.
Yeah.
So if it's thoracic, it will pick it up. It won't tell you where it is, but it will tell you that if it's there. Similarly, you talk about a laparoscopy. With all due respect, that's in the hands and the ability of the person that's doing the laparoscopy. It's not the easiest thing to see.
No.
So it may be a negative, but the repercussions of a negative laparoscopy is potentially that patient goes right back to the start and they may have waited 8 years for this diagnosis. Similarly, with ultrasound will pick up probably stages 3 and 4, may not pick up stages 1 and 2.
Yes.
Whereas the EndoSure test will. So we've got a study now going on in Brussels where they're looking at ultrasound. So they're doing an EndoSure test, they're doing an ultrasound test, and then the patient's going for laparoscopy and they're comparing the results. What I've heard so far is correlating very, very well. But the ultrasound didn't pick up 2 cases of endo that were subsequently diagnosed at laparoscopy, whereas EndoSure did.
I think laparoscopy is, I'm a gynecology surgeon by background. I think you're absolutely right that it's difficult to pick up sometimes because your symptoms, you always think the worse it looks, the more endometriosis that's there, the worse your symptoms. That's not necessarily the case. And on laparoscopy, sometimes it's tiny deposits of endometriosis on the uterosacral ligament or something like that, just tiny little dots. And unless you've got a really keen eye, you'll miss it. But actually that can cause significant pain and discomfort and symptoms for a patient.
So that's very interesting. In one of the first cases we did in the NHS, it was actually a member of staff that because she'd not drank, you can't drink on this test 6 to 8 hours before. She'd not drank, she was working, she'd had a previous clearance, but they said the pain has started to come back. Any chance you can fit her in at the end? Yeah, no problem. We did the test and it was positive. And the surgeon was there and he had the ability to go back and look at the video of her procedure. And he said, because he was surprised at the results.
Yeah.
He thought it would be negative. And they looked back and they saw some retained endo on the colon.
Right, yeah. So that's
fascinating, isn't it?
And I think this would be a great option for people who, the laparoscopy for a long time, and probably ongoing, will always be the diagnostic sort of gold standard, just because you can actually get a tissue diagnosis, you can get a biopsy, you can see it in real time. But as we heard, it is high risk. There's risk of injury to bowel, to bladder, risk of bleeding, risk of infections, general anaesthetic risk. And actually, unless you're going to be starting to treat that and actually do some adhesiolysis and cut back some of the adhesions, if you don't need that because it's not severe like that, actually you're putting yourself to a lot of risk for that diagnosis, and your management isn't going to change. The medication will stay the same. So actually, that will be much better for people who just want that validation. They just want to know that's what it is, and then they can get on with their lives.
So we've done probably 250 to 300 cases in the UK now in the private sector, and it's been very, very interesting because one thing we are able to do, if there's a positive test, the test comes with a treatment pathway, and the people we're dealing with at the moment are endometriosis specialists. So they put the patient onto a treatment pathway. In certain instances now, we're going back 3 months later and we're retesting. And what we're finding, the patients are completely different. They're much better because they're on this treatment pathway. But then we're doing a test and we're finding that this level of activity has come down. So even though it is in the private sector, we're fighting very, very hard to get it into the NHS.
Yes.
We're hoping that 2 trials will start in the not too distant future. But we're not resting on our laurels. We want to provide this evidence. We want to do case studies. It's massively important. I see patients break down when they've got a diagnosis because they've gone through years and years of not knowing. And it's just, you talk about diagnostic laparoscopy now. In the NHS, you might be waiting years to have that diagnostic laparoscopy.
And
This can be done in an hour.
During which time the woman's life is kind of on hold because she's waiting for that diagnosis.
Yeah, and if we're going to look at patients going through IVF and not getting a diagnosis and they can't get pregnant, it's going to make a big difference to their life. No, sorry, go on.
No, that's an interesting one because I think there's been things on the TV where sort of famous people have gone on there and said that they didn't have any pain.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get pregnant. It was an infertility issue.
Yes.
They'd then gone back and that's when they diagnosed the endometriosis.
Yeah. And
So-
speaking to Helen earlier, like she was saying, just knowing she had the diagnosis meant she could change her lifestyle. And, it's not all about medication. And for a lot of these women, if they don't know what they've got, they're not going to go down the right lifestyle route, getting rid of that inflammation, changing the way you exercise, changing what you eat. And it makes a big difference, particularly, not particularly, but also, I suppose, in people that are trying to get pregnant. And, having that diagnosis will really help. But for these people that want to get the diagnosis, what's the cost?
The cost for the clinic, it tends to be split into 2 now. So if you just wanted to go for the test and so when you have the test, the result has to be given by a clinician.
Yes.
It can't be given by me or anybody that does the test. It has to be done. So it would be £350. You'd have the test. A clinician would send a result of the test to your GP. For £500, it's basically the test plus a full consultation with an endometriosis specialist.
Yes.
Who will then put you onto a course of treatment. So it's basically, it's all done at the same time.
And
Yeah.
yes, it's expensive, but it's life-changing for some people. So that,
It is expensive. We're working hard. Some of the insurers have looked at it. We're working hard to get a code for the test. We're working hard to go through the insurance companies individually to try and get it covered. At the end of the day, this makes such a massive difference. We want to see this available to everybody,
Yes.
but we've got to start somewhere. We're pushing the NHS. We want to get it out to as many people as we possibly can.
The cost would be, I don't think it's extreme enough that it would put people off. And I think actually for the quality of life you get back, it's worth it. If we have got people who are listening today who are obviously looking at this and thinking this sounds like a great option, where can they find information about where to go and start the process to get this diagnosis?
The best place to go, we set up a website for women's health. It's abouttime.me. Information on the test will be on there. We're on Instagram.
Yeah.
We're on TikTok. You can pick up. And if you want to get in touch with us on the It's About Time direct message, we'll always come back to you. And any questions that you've got, we will answer.
We'll put that on the Instagram page, and anybody who wants to come and ask any questions to us, they can come onto the Talking Longevity Instagram page. We can share your links, and also they can direct message us to ask any questions. We can put them in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we're going to go in talks about setting it up for the Talking Longevity Clinic as well. So as soon as that's launched, we'll put that out as well.
That's great.
Right.
So
Thank you very much again, Ian, for coming in. I really appreciate it. And see you again soon.
yeah,
Will do.
again, thank you. Thank you very much to Helen and Ian for today. I found that chat very, very interesting. If you want more information about endometriosis, please go onto our Talking Longevity Instagram account, where we'll be putting papers and information and links to both the EndoShow product and to Helen's Instagram, where you'll get a lot more information. So let's keep talking longevity.